So um, when we look at cultural sensitivity in its essence, these are, of course, sacred seven traditions. Um, so that's another PowerPoint. So what is cultural sensitivity? Psychologydictionary.org clarifies it as it is consciousness and understanding of the morals, standards, and principles of a specific culture, society, ethnic group, or race, joined by motivation to acclimate to one's actions with such. So it's integrating with the culture that you are with, or working with, or living with, and so on. So if you were to go to, say, for example, anywhere in Asia, such as Japan, they are going to have their own specific way of how they go about doing stuff. You've seen some memes and so on where if you um, point at somebody, it's something else. Where if you in some cultures, um, doing something is like a middle finger, I guess, and so on. So and these are some of the things that people like. We don't know. We don't know unless we ask. And so that's the thing. And sometimes people don't know because it's not really discussed. And this is where we are going to discuss some of those things. So when we're defining indigenous people, First Nations, Aboriginals, or there's so many different names, Native Americans, and all this, use individual tribal affiliations. Uh, when you're talking about the Holton Band of, you would say the Holton Band of Maliseets. You wouldn't just say Maliseet in general, because it's not prevalent to the entire Maliseet generation, Maliseet First Nation or Mi'kmaq First Nation. And so sometimes when you're discussing about some nations, you will have many. Um, but for example, like Penobscot has just this one. Um, Abenaki is not federally recognized. Passamaquoddy has two tribes, or two nations and so on. So, but it's under one umbrella. Um, Maliseet, there's only one. In Canada, it's Wolastoqiyik, and so apologies if it's not spelled right. But I looked it up and so on. Mi'kmaq is like one of those, and so a lot of people are right now going towards Ulnoog. Ulnoog is our way of saying who we are, and so much like the other tribes, they would say Skij, and so or Skijinu, and so for us, Skijinu means a person. So whenever possible, try to interpret, if you're talking or discussing just this one nation or just this one tribe compared to the entire nation in its entirety. So understanding Native culture. In communities, community issues often have great effects on the individual. And so we've seen this occur, most likely in traumas, right? When something happens to an individual, it impacts, not just the individual, but the family and so on, and the tribe comes in. And so community problems are everybody's problems. When it comes to Native communities, if there is something that's going on within the community, it becomes the whole tribe's problems. It's not just that individual and all this whole, because it's because we are such a close knit community. Again, community is family. So this entire communities, we may bicker with one another and so on, but we are family in that essence. And so when there's I hate to say it like this, but when there's a trauma um, that occurs, we all come together. I feel like sometimes when an individual achievement is achieved, it's not really recognized as much, and that's where the lateral violence comes into play. So uh, strength and support can be found in family and community networks for individuals in distress. We've seen this in many different cases around the community, but not just here. It happens in other communities as well, Native communities, and not just Native communities. There's some communities which are really close, such as the fire department, police department, and so on. And so all of these little, and those are communities, but they're kind of organizations as well. When there is a death in the police department or something like that, or the fire department, all of the fire departments come together and so on. So it's not just within Native community, but for us, it this for this presentation, that's what we're going to focus on. So one of the difficulties of being a community or tribal member and working for the tribe is that you have dual relationship when it comes to and it's amplified by 10. What that means is that it's very difficult to really wrap your head around. But if you were to think about all of the actions, all of the things that we are striving forward, if those things can impact us, but when it impacts us 10 times. And so because not only in the work environment, but also as a tribal community. And so you may have negative responses by the community. You may have negative responses outside of the community. But when it's outside of the community, we really don't think about that because for us, it's about our people and the next generations coming up. There have been so many different things that have happened in the past and so on. And sometimes because of certain circumstances that occur at that present moment, such as what's going on in the news right now and all this, people didn't have that impact or have that discussion and so on. So now they're taking a look at it with fresh eyes and so on. And so now they're trying to take a look at it and see how it does impact the community. And say for us, for example, as Mi'kmaq, if say for example we come up with something that we don't really know about until later on, we may have to readdress it again. And so sometimes that's the impact that we have. And so some of these things, they impact the tribal member as far as the ones that work with the community as well. So it has that individual's impact. So we talk about families. Families are not just your nuclear family or in non-native societies they would have your mom, dad, sisters, brothers, and so on. For us, it's outside of the community, outside of that family realm that includes that. And so we have grandparents, uncles, aunts, godparents, cousins, and many others. And sometimes when we are talking about this, we develop such a relationship outside of our family that even like some individuals become the uncle or become the aunt or the cousin and all this and so on. And because that's how close they are within the family. And so sometimes when people have these discussions, it's just wanted to address that because when we talk about further on about grandparents, uncles, and aunts, we're going to be, this is included. So extended families in one household include the grandparents often raising the grandchildren. And there's nothing really wrong with that because we want to integrate and have our children still remain in the culture. A long time ago, our people were taken away by the residential schools and so on. And so now to avoid that or even avoid having to pay that daycare money and the daycare and so on, sometimes the grandparents are raising the grandchildren or the parents are having difficulty raising the children themselves. And so the grandparents take that control for the time being until the parents are ready. And so, but this is not always the case. Sense of responsibility for providing for family includes emotional, physical, and financial responsibility. Not only that, but also cultural and spiritual. And so what I mean by that is that taking your children to these ceremonies, to the gatherings, taking your children to these different events that are occurring, because these children, they need that. This is their identity. And so I want to just, this is not in the slide, but for me, to talking to all you Native American, to the Native parents that are out there, take your children. And this is not just your responsibility, but it's their responsibility as well that will occur later on. So being a member of the tribe binds our members together as family. We may bicker, especially during political times and so on, but we come together. I hate to say it again, but trauma binds us together and so on. But at the same time, even our accomplishments binds us together as well. So these are offensive, culturally inappropriate language or words. When I was younger, here in Eskimo, you know, so that's a word that for us, it's it's uh, it's it's our word. For many people. That was our word for the Inuit people, but the Inuit, the refer to themselves as Inuit. Any other tribe, when you hear them, they will say something that's along the lines of Eskimo, but that's us referring to them in that essence. So sometimes the language itself. The sacred pipe is sometimes referred to as the peace pipe. Sung, I've heard it said so many times in a joking manner, and it's not really laughable to me because the pipe is very sacred. And so we smoke with the pipe, we say our prayers with the pipe, and so on. And so having the pipe being disrespected by saying it's a peace pipe, we just smoke the peace pipe, and it's a huge offense. Having ceremonies such as, oh, why don't you do a rain dance, so that way we can get rain. Somebody's doing the war dance because they're arguing in there, or they're doing, why don't you do a sun dance, let the sun out. And it doesn't work that way. These are ceremonies that we do. We do these ceremonies for the people that need our prayers. And so when you're talking about these dances and all this, you have to really be again, this is about cultural sensitivity. It's almost like a desecration of the pipe, the ceremonies, and so on that happen. So I wanted to address that by having this discussion and saying those terms really disrespects who we are. I mean, we lost our culture many years ago, and we just slowly are attaining it back. So having that disrespected, a lot of people have become disengaged from wanting to be in their culture. Red man or redskin, squaw, Indian princess, savage. I've heard this, I haven't heard many of these, but for me, I've always been called chief. And so working at Home Depot, Lowe's, and so on, other places that were non-indigenous companies, I was always referred to as chief. And these are hurtful and cultural um, these are hurtful names, what I mean? And even like the word chief to us, that's, growing up, that was a sacred title that only the person that, today we vote on it, but a long time ago, it was a hereditary title that was passed on from father to son. And when they passed on and so on, and when the government took over and all this, it became something political. And so now, but still, many when I was younger, I voted for chief, and the chief that I voted and didn't get in, but I was young, and my uncle had told me it doesn't matter, if this is not the chief that you voted for, you respect the title, you respect the title that this person is given. If this person fails, that's on them, not on your vote. And so remember that. And ever since then, I've remembered this. And so when it comes to that, it is a very sacred title. And a lot of us, we joke around, internally about this, but at the same time, when we think about that, when we are out and about and talking about our chief and all this, we want to make it that chief itself, along with the ceremonies and the pipe and all this, is a sacred title. And so I wanted to talk about that. Improper word choice. So I've heard this so many times. Let's have a powwow. They're going off the reservation. They're on the warpath, and so on. And these improper word choices really resonate and sometimes trickle back down to our children. And it's very hurtful because we've seen even the mascot issues and so on that are taking place. And this is where a lot of this is on TV. Oh, they're Cleveland is having a they're off the reservation today, and the Kansas City Chiefs are on a warpath to win this title, and so on. And these are very inappropriate, and so many people that are not native, they will rejoice and so on because that's their team. But when you're in that school and when you're in that aspect, and you're labeled in this context, it's very negative. And so we would try to avoid those. Again, use an appropriate title affiliations. I've seen the word MIC Micmac or Micmac, but it's like no the MIC and then there's a dash MAC, and that's almost like uh, really like mispronouncing a name or miswriting a name. You know what I mean? Uh, they're looking at different aspects when it comes to that. Um, and so, as a tribal member, and also, I'm proud of being Mi'kmaq. When somebody say, Micmac, all right, I'll take it, but it's really I'm Mi'kmaq. When it comes down to it, that's who I am. So some Native American values compared to the dominant society, they prepare for tomorrow, whereas for the tribe, we tribe think about its tribe and the extended family first before they think about themselves. And so when this comes down, this is how leadership, has been taking a look at this because sometimes they can't think about themselves, even though some of these things that they pass may be for themselves. They have to think about our people. A long time ago, when people made canoes, they burnt woods and they would preserve this one birch, and so this birch will grow straight and tall, but the people will not see it until the seventh generation. So you're looking at like 70, 80, 100 years down the road. So in thinking about this one canoe, you're thinking about that, right? That these people will not see. You know, um, think about time. You use every minute, and it's linear. For us, the time is the right place, right time. It's not linear. This when it comes to time, people will say Indian time. Actually, Indian time is just when it happens. Meteorologists will tell you what time the sun comes up and what time it goes down. But for us, it will go down when it does go down. It'll rise. The sun will rise when it wants to. Doctor will tell you that your child will be born on this day, but nature will tell you that it will be born when it's ready to be born. And so that's what time is, and that's it's not really Indian time; it's nature. Nature in itself. Dominant society, they look at youth, young and beautiful, and so on. And that's great. I mean, people on Instagram, they get the likes and so on. But for us, we think about the age. I remember a coworker once got very offended when she was in front of me, and I told her, elders first, go ahead. You know what I mean? So because it was like getting a meal and all that she was ordering, and she was offended because I called her old, and I wasn't calling her old. I was basing the elder on her knowledge and her wisdom. But she took it as she's no longer young and she's no longer beautiful. And that was a negative impact for her. For us, elders, they have knowledge, wisdom, and patience. And so these are some of the aspects that we take a look at in comparison with the youth. And so this is two different values. Non-native people compete to get ahead. They don't care who they bring down. They don't care about what who goes down with the ship and so on. As long as they can get to the position that they want and get that salary. However, for us, Native people, we cooperate. We cooperate in an essence because we know that in order for this tribe to prosper, we all have to prosper. It's not just about one program, one employee, one individual, one tribal member, and all. It needs to be entirely before it won't. It won't. It's almost like setting up a wigwam. You can do it by yourself. However, you do it with other people, many hands make light work. So non-native, they're very aggressive. They're very aggressive in what they do. They want to have this and so on. And I'm talking about like competition and competing for this title, competing for this, so that they have to be aggressive. They have to be aggressive so that they can get this. For us, we're patient, right? We have to be patient. And so this is one of the key things that we talk about in being patient is that sometimes um, when I was young, I was doing carpentry work and so on. And me and my mentor, we were frustrated, and I was starting to be aggressive. And he said, "Wait, you know, let's take a little break, and we'll come back to it, and just take a look at this." So we started talking about something else. And after when we started talking about something else, I came back being much more in control of what I was going to do. And so that's the big difference between the two is that sometimes the aspect is not to take it on and try to get through it. It's just that you want to do it the right way. Speak up, right? And native, non-indigenous values, they say to speak up, I can't hear you, and so on, which is great. I mean, you do have to speak up for yourself and so on. But for us, it's about listening to our elders, listening to the lessons, listening to all of these things. And this is how we learn. We learn in this aspect by listening and in speaking up. Speaking up a little bit helps you and all this, but sometimes it can harbor ill feelings and all this and so on later on. So for me, for us anyway, when I think about it, I always listen to our elders, and and you learn quite a bit. And sometimes it's like anything else. When you listen to a song, it sounds stupid, but when it comes to a point where your heart is broken or something has occurred in your life, that song just has the deepest uh, words that you have ever heard. So some of the things I'm gonna kind of skip over because it's kind of redundant. Um, uh, for me, this one is conquer nature and so on. And so um, I look at when non-indigenous people when they conquer nature and all this, they obliterate everything that's around there. Um, I've seen parks made where they have clear cut it all everything, and then they put trees that they wanted, which is kind of really redundant um, because the park was beautiful before they clear cut it. And so they wanted to conquer that nature. They wanted their own trees. They wanted all these benches. But if they would have left it alone, it would have been just as beautiful. I think imperfection in that aspect is perfect. So for us, we live in harmony. We have to live in harmony with all things because this is Mother Earth, and Mother Earth provides for all of us, right? It gives us all the things that we need. Bisun, the medicine that's in the woods and so on. And there's so much lessons we learn from nature, but we haven't really sat down and be patient and listen, you know. Um, Again, self is more important than group. Um, and this is impacted, like, when you take a look at it, Native American values, or for us, humility. It will take a while, but you will be humbled. I've seen some people, they've grown so big that their heads swell up and all this, and then later on they're humbled. And so being humble means to walk in an essence that you are lifting other people up, and you are not below them, and not like a carpet that they can walk on, but in essence that you are humble, that you are you think about the people that you are servicing first. It's that humility that is required when you are servicing. Even like as an elder, the wrong word choice can send a person into a negative perspective. So we have to be careful of our words. So in orienting yourself to a house and a job, me and the chief, Charlie, I asked him once, I said, what did you do when you graduated, and from high school and all this, because I was curious. And he said, well, I enjoyed the moment and so on, and just kind of went with my friends, and we had a good time. I said, and I asked him, I said, what about your friends that were non-indigenous? Oh, yeah, well, they were talking about getting a job, getting a house, getting married, and all this. It's almost like they wanted to get that life and so on. And so that was one of the things, uh, and what I've been hearing is you want to orient yourself to the land that you're on. You want to orient yourself because you are here. You want to orient having a house and a job and so on is great. That will happen. For me, I feel like, this land that we're on, when you cut a tree down, it's not going to grow back for another 40, 50 years. So you want to orient yourself to that, because some of these things, even if you have a job, even if you have all these different things, a kid and so on, that tree that you cut down and you replant it again, it's not going to grow to the point that it was until your child becomes a grandparent and then you're gone. So you want to orientate yourself to the land first and foremost. Um, so in America, they say speak English, but this is a joke because it's like before it was America, there were like almost 1,000 languages. And so for us, we always cherish our own language and speak it when possible. Even if you do not know, if you are butchering it, that's fine, because you're learning. And that's just it. I mean, you have to learn your language because this is your identity. This is who you are, you know. So have instruments judge for you. I've had many people ask me about this. Have instruments judge for you. And the thing is that we even have that issue now, right? Because we use our cell phone. These are instruments. And so with these instruments, you get a text message, right? It's all caps, say it from your mom or an elder and all this, and you're thinking, why is this person mad at me, right? And so this is an instrument that's judging for you, and because it's now telling you that this person is screaming and yelling at you, when on that other area, on the elder side, that is just sending you a text message. So judge things for yourself. Call them, talk to them, listen to them, and these are some of the things that when it comes to values and all this that will help you along the way. So in speaking to tribal people, you want to adapt your tone of voice, your volume, your speed of speech patterns to fit the clients or the people's communication style. Um, in many cases, speech may be on their end slower, and silence is more acceptable. And when a story is told, let it be finished and do not interrupt. When you come to an area, defer to elders, such as a home and so on, even in many other gatherings that happen, and respect the narrative style of communication, because sometimes people will tell you a story um, in that will lead to the issue that is current. And one other thing too is to avoid going over the heads of people. You want to bring it back down to their level, because not everybody is a nurse. Not everybody out there understands jargon that people in your job understand. You want to come down to their level. I'm not saying that they're not educated, but many of us, um, even as I've done this with nurses, and so when another nurse comes in and speaks to your mom or your loved one, the nurse comes out and says, "Mom, this is what they mean. This is what they're trying to say." And this is what we should be doing with our not just clients, but with our tribal members, our people that we are talking to, is that we don't want to talk over their heads. We want to simplify it and so on. And so cut out, bring it down to layman's terms and so on. So, And even if you have to use that jargon, we're going to use this jargon, but this is what this jargon means, and so on. And so you want to bring it back down to their level. So in general, when you talk about communication norms, first, Indigenous people show respect by not making eye contact with people. Remember that it's a compliment, not an insult or indication of slyness. So it's not to think that they're not trying to think of something else, or they're like not really being honest with you. It's just that for us, for us, it's intimate. When you have, for me myself, if I'm making eye contact with you for a very long time, that could be kind of creepy, right? For many people, but at the same time too, is it can be very intimate. And so, in many cases, when I talk to elders, I look at them, but they look away, and because they look away, they're having that. It's about having that thought, and so Native American students often have a longer response time in answering to a direct question from a person. This is the same thing for elders. Again, this is a sign of respect and shows that the question deserves thought. This person is thinking, and if they're looking at you and all this, they're really not answering. So a lot of people will make assumptions that they are coming up with a lie, or they're coming up with some kind of answer. So, but the thing is, you ask the question, wait for the answer. So Native Americans again tend to value the family more. A Native American identity is often intertwined with his or her family. So the phrases such as individual achievement or individual recognition is not fully recognized, because um, this, for me myself, I couldn't um, think of or fathom, like, why am I being recognized when all of us did this? And so so they may feel comfortable being singled out for praise or attention, and more comfortable when the group is recognized as a whole. And so some people, you will see that, because they'll get their recognition. Oh, I don't, I'm okay. I don't want that. That's fine. And so um, that's a part of humility. You know what I mean? That because that is a huge part of humility, because this person recognizes that it was, yes, thank you for recognizing me, but I feel like this is more of a team than anything else. So, so in overcoming the barriers, again, time is relative, right? Scales of time are very different. For many people, they think about, oh, John, hurry up! It's 11:25. You've got to do this before 12. Hurry up, please. But in reality, the scales of time are very different, because I want to be thorough in how I do this. I can rush through and all this and so on, but I have to bring up all of these issues so that other people can really recognize this. So that the Indigenous people contemplating a thorough exploration of ideas. And these are some of the things that will come up. You have to learn to be patient and have respect for all, not just both, but all points of views. Sometimes last minute things come up, right? And so on, because it's not just our life, it's the people behind us, the people in that we put in the back burner. And sometimes those people are us. We need to think about ourselves as well as people that we love. Again, establish trust and rapport. This is the key to success. Um, Going on hands-on approach, going out there, face-to-face interaction, being familiar by listening and understanding. Do not oversell or make hollow promises to our people. They will hold you to it, you know. And the thing is, again, trust and rapport. An incident happened with my mom, and she was very upset because somebody called, and in the middle of the call, they hung up. She was upset. And so the nurses would ask me, why is this happening and all this? And I said, well, she's upset because you guys hung up on her. No, I'm sorry, John, we had telephone issues. And this is it. It's the it's the face-to-face interaction that needs to be made. Going over and talking to that person and saying, I'm sorry that that you feel that we hung up on you, but we had a phone issue that occurred, and so and that's just it. I mean, the trust and rapport came back, it came back in full, and that was it. Even like my mom was very happy. Oh, geez, yeah, the supervisor called me and apologized. I was so happy. And this is it. That's all sometimes people need. But again, here is the negative aspect. A story was shared with me, and this story is about a nurse that came to an elder's home to treat the gangrene. Now the nurse had seen that there were empty bottles, empty wine bottles, and so on. So this gentleman has been drinking. This elder had been drinking. So before this nurse left, she left behind brochures on alcoholism and how it affects people with diabetes. The next time when the nurse came, she was not welcome. Why? Because she had oversold. She was there to treat the gangrene, not the alcoholism, right? Because the person that's dealing with the alcoholism is not the alcohol, it's the trauma behind it. And that's just it. And sometimes you need to build that rapport before you can do something like this. If you don't have that rapport, that door is shut. When you come to a house, sharing food is a sign of respect. If you do not want it, that's okay to say no, thank you. I already ate before I came, or just take it anyway and eat it later on, or somebody else wants it, but or you can say it, something else. But it is a sign of respect. So when somebody shares food with you, just observe that they respect you. So keys to effective partnerships are recognized in tribal governments as sovereign entities. You have to recognize that we, as Mi'kmaq, we had dealings with the U.S. A lot of people do not recognize this because they think that we're just a small little organization. But no, in its entirety, we are a government. You know, you have to acknowledge that tribal interests are not just limited to tribal lands. These are tribal interests also are towards the future generation, the our children, the issues that are occurring in these days, and so on. So it's acknowledging all of those tribal interests, and sometimes you reach out to not just tribal leaders but elders as well to see what um, interests there are. And again, I'm covering this again, but beware stereotyping on both sides. I mean, like for me, I'm always wary about saying stuff and all this. I will say stuff about myself here and there, but when it comes to indigenous and all this and so on, I don't refer to stereotyping even myself because that allows others to stereotype me, and I will not stereotype towards non-indigenous people because I don't want them to do that to me as well. So be aware of that. Communication style and character are a very significant aspect of culture. And so we see this. We see that some people are very shy. You got in so many res memes. You've got the shy girl that's holding. It's like they have their hand to their mouth and they're very shy. They don't want to interact. That's perfectly fine. That is who they are. That's their communication style. When they're with their people in all this, they open up. But when they're outside of their elements and all this, they close. And that's just one of the few things that you will find when you are dealing with elders, when you are dealing with like our tribal members, our communication style and the character. And some people will want to talk, will want to be heard and so on because they haven't been heard, or they've been heard so many times, but nobody's doing anything about it. So that's one of the few things that happens, and you have to respect that about the person themselves. So this is one of the things that people don't understand sometimes, and so we're going to go over the other aspects. Traditional medicine. Uh, some people they acknowledge traditional medicine because there's so many aspects of it, but a lot of people don't really know. And so um, when we're talking about healing and health in all this native perspective and understanding native culture, these are the four medicines that we have, and each represent in different elders, they'll represent different directions or different perspectives, such as the north, south, east, west. There's the four colors, the four medicines and so on. And so people always ask me, what is the proper colors and so on. Of course, white is always going to be north because that's where the whiteness, the white animals and so on are, and the snow. And so hopefully that will remain for the next generations. And then you go from different categories. Sweetgrass grows in the east, so it's always placed in the east. Cedar is going more northern, and it's always placed in the north. So tobacco and sage, some people would say tobacco is in the south, and then sage is out west. So all of these um, can intertwine. But cedar is used to purify and protect the home. Cedar is also used for many different aspects. And if you want to have more contact, talk to an elder, about these medicines and so on. If you want to have somebody say a prayer, somebody saying this, any of these medicines are politically correct. But majority will accept tobacco. Majority will say tobacco. But I've never really, when I asked to say a prayer, I doesn't really matter to me any of these medicines because I use those medicines for myself, and that's just it. When somebody gives you something, you want to cleanse it. You want to remove that negative energy. You want to remove that negative energy within yourself as well. When you're saying a prayer, we use tobacco. We use tobacco in the sacred fire. We use tobacco if we're going to, before we chop down any tree, before we do anything in the land. We put that tobacco down. It's not just the action of putting the tobacco down. You have to, from your heart, specify why you are doing what you're doing, because you are taken from your mother, and so on. Sweetgrass we used to smudge as well, and cedar as well. So some of these things are they have synonymous or so many different aspects of how they're utilized. Spirit and culture. Culture and spirit and language and practices are inseparable. So when you're talking about language and all this, language and culture, in order for me to understand culture, I had to understand the language. And a lot of our words, in the language today, they're borrowed from the French, because some of these terminology we did not have. We did not have some of these. We didn't have a church. We didn't have what we would call a basement. We didn't have many of these things. We lived in where we lived, and so people will ask me, John, how do you say this? How do you say that? If you think about how our people lived a long time ago, we didn't have people in recovery. We didn't have people that were going through what they're going through now. So you have to bear with us when we have to think about how we say these things, because it's not something that our people are used to. So we have to kind of sometimes make up these words as we go along. And so when it comes to practices, people in your work environment will have long hair, headbands, certain items of traditional clothing. They may have certain arts as well as beadwork, lettercraft, and all that, but they may have what they call a medicine pouch, and it's what's in that medicine pouch is that person's. That's them. That's their medicine. That's not for anybody to go in and. But at the same time, if a person is utilizing that medicine and putting something else in there that they're using for their own greed, that's something on their own, and humility will come with that later on. And to specify, please, don't ask or don't touch without asking. Hair, regalia, beadwork, and all that, and because sometimes your energy is negative, and it's not saying that we're all negative, but you never know what energy that person has and so on. And so sometimes you have to ask that permission. It's like sometimes even crafters, beadworkers out there will ask, hey, can I take a look at that? Like, yeah, go ahead. It's like, and they talk about how this beadwork was done and so on, or how this regalia, or it's like just like, oh, your hair is so beautiful and so on. I love the braid and all this. But even like myself, I will not touch. Even like with their permission, I'll just have them take a, touch it themselves and show it to me because I feel like that's their boundaries. So the eagle is um, for many of us that are, you uh, know about the culture. Even before I knew about the culture, the eagle always flew by Neskasoni, and it has such significance. I don't know why, as a young man, but it's true history and through those stories and so on. And it's such a huge symbol and a sign. I mean, when a person, an eagle flies by, your day gets better. There's so much that's in there. So for us, it's a huge cultural symbol, um, that we have a spiritual helper or spirit guide. I mean, because the eagle is so sacred to us, because the eagle, again, flies the highest, and in flying the highest can go to the creator, and then bring back all of those things that the creator wants in us and wants us to bring to the people. um, the chief in the past has asked me to include this, and I've always, I've always included this. So many people in the United States, when they don't know about treaties, they don't really know about a lot of the different things that happen with us as far as indigenous people. And so the Treaty of Watertown, um, you know, a lot of people will say it with the Mi'kmaq. I'm just going to specify the Mi'kmaq Indian Nation, or the Mi'kmaq Nation itself. We signed this years ago. There were probably others, but at, at this present moment, I can't really say that that I am 100% accurate of who else, what other nation else signed with that, and I do apologize. But I will say that for us, 239 years ago, this treaty, an international treaty, was signed between the U.S. and with these sovereign nations, or this sovereign nation. And so that's a huge thing because that recognizes us as a nation. And so in 2015, of course, to mark the 239th anniversary. Um, and so this is a huge accomplishment. And because at that time we were, like anything else, majority of us were recognized as nations. And the Jay Treaty. Jay Treaty was a treaty that was signed with the U.S. After the, when we had worked with the U.S. and so the people went back to Canada. So if you're born in Canada, have at least 50%. I say Aboriginal on here because this was terminology that U.S. and Canada have. So indigenous blood, you may be entitled to certain rights. You are entitled to these rights and benefits, but you have to prove that you are. And so you have the right to cross the U.S. Canadian border, live and work in the U.S., and also be eligible for public benefits such as all of these things listed. You can also register for college or university as a domestic student rather than a foreign student. So this comes with, because with a foreign student it comes with appropriate fee adjustments and so on. So a lot of these different things, a lot of people do not know, and so that's why some of these things we had to bring up, because I've done these cultural sensitivity trainings with people that work in the border, people that work uh, at different agencies, AMHC, and so on, and ACAP and all this, and so they have worked with Canadian Mi'kmaq and all this, and they're like not sure how to go about helping them and all this because they're not sure if, well, they're not U.S. citizens, and and so on. So a lot of these different terminologies, when you take a look at the Jay Treaty, cuts it all out. We are native. We are. It doesn't really matter. Um, we can call ourselves U.S. citizens if you're from Canada and so on, but you are, you know, here. And I think that's about it. So I'm going to come back to you guys and see, stop sharing. Uh, any questions, comments? So quiet. Feel like I'm at a quorum. All right, I will stop sharing, and from here on out, have a great day and have a great weekend. I cannot stop this recording.